The orthodox medicine approach is one of an outside-in approach where there's a better solution that lies outside of you. By putting this into you, that improves that's the paradigm. It really was about health. That was the key thing that we wanted it to be about, and to allow the space for people to change, because most people want something to change in their lives generally, and most people know what that change is, and it's rarely the knowing, and it's normally the doing.
I'm very excited. I'm really excited to having a coffee shoved up my bottom again, along with a load of colonic irrigation. And I'm going to have my shots now.
Different people have different needs when they come to Amchara, but they have one thing in common, and they all want something to change. And so we're about manifesting that change experience for the individual. If you're thinking about fasting for the first time and you're considering it, there are also people I would caution against fasting, or at least some cautions to be aware of before you fast. If you're abstaining from food for a 12-hour period, some people could argue that's a bit of a fast. You could then consciously just eat in a 4-hour period of a day, and you could fast for 20 hours, or eat in a 6-hour period and fast for 18 hours. That could be called time-restricted eating, or it could be called daily intermittent fasting.
So I'm just going to have a colonic irrigation and a coffee enema. And I'm in here with Susie, who's setting up the tank behind me. And there's a lovely picture of the intestinals tract, which I'm going to get cleaned out and get my liver cleaned out with the coffee. Oh, I do love this.
So talk us through the process of autophagy.
Autophagy is a natural process where the cells go from
Welcome to The Wellness Way with me, Philly J. Lay, a layperson's guide to your natural health systems, your very own NHS.
Hello, lovely people, and welcome to another episode of The Wellness Way. Well, if you saw last week's episode, you will know that I had a thermogram and I had a little red blockage there that I wasn't very happy about, and I had to do something about it. And I did an episode to say that I wasn't going to have a mammogram, and I didn't. But what I did do was I picked up the phone to this man, Justin Williams. Now, Justin and I first spoke, about 6-7 years ago.
Yes, maybe 8. Yeah.
Maybe 8, when I started my healing journey. And I phoned the most wonderful retreat called Amchara. Now, Justin wouldn't normally pick up the phone, but he did. And as we spoke about before we started filming, there are no coincidences in life. And we were actually meant to talk. So anyway, I have just been for a week at the most beautiful place on earth, Amchara, which is kind of my soul home. And so I wanted to invite Justin Williams, the owner and founder, on the show. Justin, thank you so much for coming on.
It's such a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me to this lovely place. It's wonderful to be here.
My pleasure. So first of all, I want to ask you, Amchara is a very special place. It's not a health or a wellness retreat as people might kind of go, I'm going to a spa, or I'm going on retreat and I'm doing some fasting and everything. All the people there are incredibly special, and they're naturopaths, and they're, Reiki masters and healers, on a really top level, which is why I needed to go back there last week. So what got you into this journey? How did you start this? And why is your retreat so different from other people's?
There's two parts to that answer. On a literal level, I'm actually the co-founder of Amchara with my partner Karen. And the night we got together, a friend of mine had pictures of Karen on her fridge. And I used to see these bits. I need to meet this girl. I want to meet this girl. And circumstances manifested that we did get together. And on the night that we got together, she said to me that she wanted to set up. I asked her what she wanted to do. And she said, I want to set up a health retreat. And I said, well, why don't you then? And she said, well, I know nothing about websites or marketing or what have you. And I said, well, I do. And and I joke actually, I said I do to Karen on the first night that I met her.
Did you know that 22 billion pairs of shoes every year go into landfill? I find that disgusting, and so does my sponsor, Vivo Barefoot, and they're doing something about it. And that's why the lovely people at Vivo have offered my audience an exclusive 20% discount off your first order with the code PJL20. You know how much I love my grounding and how important it is for your health. And because of Vivo, you can stay grounded all the time. Head to their webpage and check out their new grounding shoe, entwined with silver to connect you to the earth, as worn by myself and Barbara O'Neill.
And so it was interesting that she decided that she wanted to do that, and that it became the first thing we talked about. And we ended up setting it up. We got together, then 18 months later, the first retreat opened. So that was one dimension of it. And then in terms of what we wanted to set up, the notion of change is very important to me for personal reasons as much as anything else. And when we started Amchara, we were clear what we didn't want it to be, which was that we didn't really just want to be a spa or replicate a spa experience. Yes, there are spa elements there that augment or an adjunct almost to the experience of being there, and people love those.
Yes.
And it's,
I've had more massages than I can shake a stick at in the last week, and my loppy ear, which we'll come to. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, not at all. And whilst that is a part of the experience there, it really was about health. That was the key thing that we wanted it to be about, and to allow the space for people to change. Because in my view, most people want something to change in their lives generally, and most people know what that change is. And it's rarely the knowing, and it's normally the doing that's the obstacle, that's the cause. It's not generally a great revelation to someone who's a smoker that stopping smoking would be of a good health benefit to them. And so what we can do at Amchara is start by providing that environment and enabling that beginning process of change, where you can go away from all those stresses and difficulties that we're all immersed in all the time in our regular lives and daily lives. And suddenly you can, it's like the giant exhale.
I know.
The giant breath out. And so that environmental element is important. And then when you're in that environment, it's very personalized to you, the individual. Different people have different needs when they come to Amchara, but they have one thing in common, and they all want something to change. And so we're about manifesting that change experience for the individual.
I love that. It's quite unique for me because, I think I've taken your youngest clients there, when the girls were much younger, and you had to think about it. And I think a lot of it kind of went over their head when they were younger. But I realised on this journey how much the roots had actually sunk in. So when they came back as young adults of 21 and 23, they were ready to start their journey knowing what they'd learned last time. And I know for me that, again, I'm a shit hot manifester. I say it on almost every show. But, the people that I've met at Amchara have completely revolutionised my life. So the beautiful Adele Wolfenstall, I met her. I was just about to go on thyroxine because I'd had half my thyroid taken out. And she went, there's no need for that. We could look at another solution. And then I saw her afterwards and we found another solution. I have now finished that solution back in 2020, just had my bloods done, and I'm absolutely spot on with my thyroid. And I'm just going, the doctors tell you that, that you can't live without their medicine. And it's a lie. And I've proved it. And, you teach loads and loads of people how to live their life without this.
Yeah, I would like to think that we are enabling people to run their lives better.
Yeah.
People will say that you've changed our life, you've saved our life, all these things. And on one level, don't get me wrong, it's lovely to hear. And I much prefer the outcome, or I much prefer the journey that you've changed your life. We've just provided the space for you to do it yourself. If you like, the orthodox medicine approach is one of an outside-in approach, where there's a better solution that lies outside of you, and by putting this into you, that improves that's the paradigm, the outside in approach works. And in some cases, in emergency cases in particular, I think that's really valid and valuable. If you've been smashed up in a car accident, I love acupuncture, but I probably at that point want a skilled surgeon to put my bones back together, so then nature takes over and they heal so beautifully. And outside of those acute moments, when it comes to more chronic conditions in general, I would argue that there's an outside-in approach that can work wonderfully. And our job is to enable you to find that for yourself. And I think that's more rewarding personally, and to see other people take control of their lives to run their life the way they want to.
Yep, absolutely. There must have been a starting point that you got into all this. So what happened in your life that was kind of a turning point where you woke up to allopathic medicine?
We all have stuff, right? Don't we? I had been in a family experience that I had seen very close hand destructive relationships, and really deeply codependent relationships. And on one level, it wouldn't have needed much to have had an extraordinarily different outcome for all the people in that nuclear family. And I was very impacted by that personally. And so that really sat with me. And then on my journey, I've been fortunate enough to be exposed to some incredible people. And the most stark one that stands out for me at a youngest age was a guy called Dr. Stephen Covey. He wrote the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I happened to listen to this elongated audio. They were old cassettes they had
Yes.
then, the old cassettes. And it was hours of material. And I just listened to it every night, and I would play it at night in my headphones. And I was just so taken with this methodology that he had, and also the integrity of the man, because many of the self-help gurus, there is often a strong financial element to what's going on with them. And I've got nothing against people making money, and it's an important part of our life, and in this interdependent world we need that. And yet Stephen Covey just came at things from such a integrity-centered perspective, in my view, and I think that really set me up. And then I got into acupuncture not long after that, and I had a different understanding of health then, and I became more cautious about the orthodox model of health, and that opened up new things for me, and more, and you start to attract more and more of it. And now in Amchara, and for the last 15 years or so I've been in Amchara, I just meet the most incredible people, and it's very humbling actually to be around all these awesome people. And I feel like I'm an imposter. It's imposter syndrome at some level. That
We all have that, love.
yeah, I just know these amazing people, and I benefit in that I get this opportunity to talk about all these things. And really, it's the team at Amchara and also a lot of the people I met on the outside of Amchara as well that have enabled me to learn so much and gain. So I feel like I'm standing on the shoulder of giants, really.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah.
And it is incredibly humbling. And, I'll come to my colonic irrigation later because it is one of my favourite topics. But the reason that I booked Amchara the first time when I started my healing journey, and I just had the tumour and half my thyroid taken out of my throat, and I booked Amchara because I was reading about fasting at the time, and I knew that I needed to fast to facilitate my healing journey, but I didn't have the willpower to do it. And somehow you just popped up, and I booked, and I came out to you with my children. And the fasting I actually found remarkably easy at Amchara. I tried to do it at home, and I was failing badly. I was beginning to kind of push the break fast and, do some intermittent fasting, but the big fast that I knew I needed to do, I couldn't do. I want to talk to you about fasting. It is such an important element of somebody's health. Unravel it for us.
It's there's so much to say.
I know.
And so let's start with the ancientness of it. And in fact, I'll tangent for a moment, if I may. Most of the new things I learn are ancient wisdom,
Oh, yes.
in my view. And in some respects, we're just going back to what's already been known for millennia. And
I mean, fasting is in every religion. Ayurvedic medicine, it was a massive component of that. So carry on.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So if we look at, say, the Christian religion, you have Jesus fasting for 40 days, and we have this Lent period where you didn't, and of course that happened to be at the end of winter as well, when there wasn't much food around too. So perhaps part of that was educating that going without food was good for you because you're in this Lent period as well. If we look at the Muslims, they have, through Ramadan and the natural cycle of the moon, they have a period of fasting. And this is thousands of years of tradition that's existed. And the evidence now shows how great it is for the mitochondria. So you have this incredible knowledge around fasting and how amazing it is for us. So it's old. It's what we've evolved to fast. The hard thing is, in a modern world where we're bombarded to stimulate our system with constant food and drinks and the stresses that are going around us as well, it's very, very hard to be without that. And so the first time of encountering fasting, often people are coming to Amchara having never done it before, often with a bit of trepidation. Now, not everyone who comes to Amchara fasts. 50% of clients who come to us don't fast because it isn't appropriate for them, but 50% do. And I think for those that do, they're enabling not just healing, but there's other things that start to emerge as well. Now, once you've gone through
It's
that,
quite an emotional process, especially a water fast.
yeah, and you're peeling back layers. You're peeling back layers to, I think, when you get to what I would call the core. When we look at the change structure, when you look at the structure of change, Robert Dilts did this incredible thing about the structure of change. And he talks about 6 levels: the environment, then there's our behaviors, then there's our capabilities, then our beliefs, then our identity, and then beyond is the 6th one. And you can understand that with the following phrase: I can do that here, and how they link to different levels. Environmental is where change often happens for people. And if you think about it, that if you lived in a really messy home and the street outside was full of burnt out cars and was a really uncomfortable environment to be in, that's quite likely to affect how other people are in that environment. Fairly obviously, if you live in a beautiful, like around here, the beautiful place, it's so healing. Those things then likely link to a change in behavior. And as you work through these neurological levels, these 6 neurological levels as they're called, you can go through an elevated process of change. When people are first starting, when it comes to Amchara, often for the first time, it's that change in environment they've experienced. That leads to change in behavior. Of course, once you're then outside of that bubble and back in the real world, that environmental pressure then starts to push down on you. And interestingly, a lot of the work that we're now doing is, or we're moving into, is how can we create programs that support people post Amchara. Now, to get more, sorry,
I'm going to
Yeah.
I'm going to tell a story here because it's
Okay.
quite funny. So the first time when I brought my children, and Talia had been diagnosed with ADHD, and the school had insisted that she was put on Ritalin medication, or they were going to kick her out, and she loved her school. So against my wishes, this was done, and that was, and I was healing the grief of, my soulmate and best friend, and there was a lot going on. My marriage was coming to an end, and I just knew it was the right place. So Talia, I managed to get her kind of clean for the week. She didn't do fasting, like you said, only about 50% of people do, but she went on to one raw vegan meal at 6 o'clock, but she was juicing during the day and having a smoothie. And when we went, she took a book with her, and she said, I took the book actually, and she said, "Oh, I can't read a book because I'm ADHD and I can't read a book." So, Dad's got me, audio. So I listened to the audio, and I said, "Well, let's just see how it is by the end of the week." She went, "I can't read a book," And by day 5, she picked up that book and she read it from cover to cover and she went, oh my God, I've just read a really big book on psychology. I went, you did, my darling, because you've just cleared out your system. Now, we met this lovely woman, Gillian, there, and we were catching the flight back to London together. And we all went from Amchara to the airport. And Talia we had our raw picnic that you give us to take away. So, all beautiful, organic and sugar-free. And Talia said, oh, I'm just going to the loo. And she came back and she had been quite a long time. And I said, where were you? And she went, she said, I was hungry. And I went, why? What have you eaten? And she had a bowl of pasta and a croissant. And I was so cross with her. And we got on the aeroplane. And Gillian wasn't sitting with us. We were sitting apart. And Talia had been this lovely, sweet, because Gillian had met her on the 5th day. Beautiful, calm girl, reading psychology books. We got off the plane and she was bouncing off the wall again. And Gillian looked at me and said, what on earth happened? I went, yeah, she had pasta and a croissant. And she went, it's like a different girl. I don't recognise her. And this is what Amchara gives you the facility to do, is to take away those problems of the world. And they are a problem. We are being poisoned on an extraordinary level with this toxic food. And, that is addictive and we're being poisoned. And you take that away from us. But when you get in the real world, it is hard to keep that up. Yeah. But I'm just going to tell you one last part of this story. As we left Amchara yesterday, Tali put up on her story what an amazing journey she had and how nervous she was at going on holiday with her dad this week, where the food wouldn't be as good.
Yeah, we're providing that environment which makes it easy to start off with, to kickstart a journey. And then you go back into the real world and imperceptibly it all starts to close on you, and you then have to battle through what I would say up the neurological levels. And it tends to be 3 steps forward, 2 steps back for people when they're going through these changes. Fasting is the choice to abstain from eating for a period of time. And there are lots of different types of fasting these days, or things that are prescribed or referenced as types of fasting. I think you can think of them for the amount of time that you're fasting for. And I think you can think of them in terms of what you consume or don't consume during those periods. So if you think of the time that you fast for, break your fast. Again, ancient language. Yep. It's always interesting to learn from ancient language, I think. We break our fast. And if you're abstaining from food for a 12-hour period, some people could argue that's a bit of a fast. You could then consciously just eat in a 4-hour period of a day, and you could fast for 20 hours, or eat in a 6-hour period and fast for 18 hours. That could be called time-restricted eating, or it could be called daily intermittent fasting. You then could have prolonged fasting or extended fasting, where you're fasting for a few days at a time. Then within that fasting, some people are having what I would call augmented fasting or boosted fasting, and they're drinking juices, vegetable juices, or they're drinking smoothies, which is resting the gut. So at least the gut doesn't have to work to digest things. Or they're drinking butter tea. I'm so into Tibetan butter tea now. It's just...
I haven't had butter tea.
It's really interesting. You know, the bulletproof coffee revolution happened all those years ago.
With Dave Asprey.
Yeah, I don't drink coffee. So I started getting curious from a tea point of view. And I was watching a Dave Asprey video and he was talking about this. And these diminutive yet wiry Tibetans, when he would go out to Nepal and they're scaling these mountains and carrying so much on their back, and they're drinking this yak butter tea that they make, and they add salt to it, and with this yak butter tea, and they drink like 60 cups of this a day.
Oh my God, what's it? So it's just yak?
Yeah, they use yak butter and they mash it up. They don't have Vitamixes, of course, out in the middle of Nepal or Tibet, and so they just and their women are there like for hours and just sort of massaging, for want of a better word, this tea and vortexing, but manually, this tea to blend the butter, and then they're drinking this tea. And so I don't mash. I use a Vitamix. 20 seconds, blend it up, heat it through, and I drink this tea when I'm fasting. I've now found that when I'm doing prolonged fasting, I fast almost every day on a time-restricted way. So I'm not eating yet today. I drink structured water, which is something else I think I should talk about. That helps me fast. It keeps me satiated during the day, I'm no longer hungry anymore when I fast. Or if I am, it's a peaceful hunger. It's a very important difference. And it's not, I need to eat. It's not that mangry hunger that often we associate. And that tends to be, that's really a craving as much as anything else that's come from pasta, sugar, bread, those things. It's just a gentle, peaceful hunger that I'm just not bothered about, and I'll eat when I'm ready. And that's it. But this Tibetan tea, it's amazing, and it's really simple. You use a particular tea. I'll send you the tea, and you can put a link to it afterwards. And you break it up. You put some Celtic sea salt, I prefer. You put it into a pan, and you just warm it through, and then put it into like a Vitamix, blend it up, then put it back in the pan, warm it up again, and drink it. And it's so fulfilling, it's so satiating, and the fat then gets into the cells really easily, which is then really good for the mitochondria. And so I would say that fasting should be viewed more strategically as a way to rest the body and allow it to heal. And so I'm actually I'm a great exponent now of having this augmented fasting or supported fasting, where you're having smoothies or juices or butter teas. Most people, when they begin to fast, for most people, it's driven by a desire to lose weight. And I understand that. And I have gone through that journey too. I've had some peaks and troughs in my health, and I understand that. And without doubt, fasting works to help you lose weight. Unquestionably. Fairly obviously, if you don't eat anything, you're going to lose weight.
I mean, that's why I started it, because I just spent 2 years of my life in bed, and I was like this big beach whale, and I couldn't walk, and I knew that I had to lose weight in order to start regaining my health.
And then that's the interesting thing you say, that I think that once you then get into it, it becomes something more.
Yeah.
And there are some esoteric elements. I don't want to get too out there, but when you start to fast consistently, there's little I've seen that's a greater enabler of change. And I'm all about change for good. That's my mission. And so now, and that now links into our sort of post-retreat work, and the change work that we're now doing post-retreat is trying to support people to do that. That isn't always with fasting, but fasting's a huge part of it. And you do it consistently, you get in touch with something that I would just call something higher. And I just won't put it any more than that, but you just get into something different that's outside of self, and is very humbling to even know. And at the same time, really important to remain grounded with that too.
Let's talk about autophagy now, because that's why I went back to Amchara this time to fast. And I wanted a supporting fast, because I knew that whatever's going on in my right breast, I needed the cells to start just munching up and using the autophagy on my body. So talk us through the process of autophagy.
Autophagy is a natural process where the cells go into repair mode, very simply. The powerhouse of the cell, the battery of the cell is called the mitochondria. And our cells are constantly dividing to try to keep up with this modern life and busy life that we're leading. When you fast and your body goes into rest, it can go, it goes into repair mode. In Michael Mosley's documentary, bless him, Eat Fast, Live Longer, there's a guy called Dr. Vlonga who's featured in that book. Great guy. If you get him into interview, he'd be an amazing guy. He talks about that once you've fasted for 4 days, that this healing process has really kicked on in a really major way. Different people argue for different lengths of time. I think consistency is the most important thing, really. You're doing it regularly. But this self-healing where the cells are going into repair mode as opposed to divide mode. And in that repair mode, the free radicals, which are the cells that have gone wonky, to keep it simplified, and are signaling a disease signal to the body, are turned off, and the body goes into healing instead. And some people argue, and it's an argument I'm persuaded by, that if you have well-functioning, ordered mitochondria cells, then you don't have disease.
I would agree with that. I did my 4 days, and then I only broke the fast actually. And Sassy, my youngest, she did 4 days and then went on a water fast for 24 hours as well, which I was incredibly proud of her for doing that. She just pushed that little bit past, because it's always good to push outside your comfort zone.
A little bit further.
A little bit further every time you do it. But for me, just getting that autophagy to kick in, so that whatever's happening in my body, whatever I need to clean up at this precise moment in time, I know my body's got it.
It's really important. And what I would like to say, if I may, because I think it's also really important to say this, is that if you're thinking about fasting for the first time and you're considering it, there are also people I would caution against fasting, or at least some cautions to be aware of before you fast. Number one, if you have eating disorders, it's not a good way to go. So I would caution people when they have eating issues, anorexia and others, fasting simply isn't right for you. One of the biggest challenges we have at Amchara is screening people when that's an issue. So they shouldn't. Lactating mums shouldn't, because fasting can release toxicity into the breast milk. So they shouldn't fast as well. If you're on lots of medications and high dose medications, you should be cautious about fasting, because there's conflict with fasting and the medications, and you should probably seek advice before you do that. Therefore, one of the and this isn't a plug for Amchara, I'm just saying that if you go to Amchara or something like that, you can be supported in that regard, because our doctor screens all the questionnaires first before you go. But if you're going on this journey yourself, be cautious about it first and do your research and speak to a professional about it. And I'm happy just if anyone wants to shoot me an email, send an inquiry form to Amchara, I can give some advice on that. And there's lots of advice on our website as well.
Brilliant.
So
Thank you, my love.
Be thoughtful about it.
I'm going to touch on
motivation.
2 of those.
Yeah.
One, you talk about breastfeeding. I would also say when you're pregnant.
100%. Yes,
Absolutely
exactly.
don't fast. You're building a new body. Eating disorders. So I want to talk to you about this. So when Sassy, my youngest, was 12 and she came to Amchara, she was quite... I hope she'll forgive me, but she was quite a chubby child. I don't know why, because we ate very healthy food in our house, but we're, as I joke with the children, we're all from fat fucker stock, so we have to be very careful what we eat. And she didn't fast, but she did a supported smoothie fast, as I said, with a raw vegan in the evening. And she got very excited about losing weight and wanted to continue this when we got home. And I supported her as a 12-year-old because I knew she was incredibly unhappy with her weight. And so I would make your beautiful energy balls and, you know, lots of the recipes, because you do these great cookery classes as well with all these healthy foods. So I was making those and letting her skip breakfast and giving her this lovely little snack box to take for break time for her first lesson. And that's when she broke the fast. But it got a little bit too far, and she didn't border. Now, my children like to say she bordered on anorexia. I don't think... I trained at Elmhurst Valley School. I know what anorexia is, and this was not bordering on anorexia. However, it went too far. And I got the blame for that very much within the family, that I had pushed her. And how do you find that balance, especially with young girls who are very unhappy with their weight, and you know that you can do something to help them, and then it goes too far? How do you find it?
Look, I think that, number one, we have to think of the environmental pressures that are on so many people, and social media is a part of that for younger children in a major way. I count myself very lucky. I grew up in an era when none of that existed. I now love it, but as a child, I didn't have any of that. It's different for every individual, Philly. It needs to be personalised for each individual. As a general guide, I'd say be cautious and learn. Be cautious first and learn about it. And to see it as long-term change as well. Now, when it comes to children, their parents are a massive part of that, of course. And so parents can seek guidance. There is an incredible network of awesome practitioners in this world, and there's so much help out there. Just get curious and just start asking the questions and find it. There's lots of solutions out there, but I would say be cautious. What I find interesting is, if I could talk more about adults, because I'm more comfortable with that, if I may. when I see adults thinking about going into fasting and considering going into fasting, one of the first things to say, "Oh, I couldn't fast. I love my food," and I think, well, who doesn't? I love breathing. Oh, I love my air. I love my air. I love breathing. And who doesn't love food? Everyone loves food. It's such an amusing thing when I hear people say, "Oh, I love my food." Of course you do.
Did you miss our lecture with Barbara O'Neill live in London on the Wellness Way this summer? You can grab a copy now on my webpage, phillyjlay.com.
I would suggest I get more enjoyment out of my food now than I ever have done. One of the joys of fasting is it takes you into a place of honouring everything you do and honouring everything you consume. And now every meal I have is an event. And in a way that some people would do grace before a meal, I have a different ritual for food, and it includes a deep appreciation of what I'm about to consume. And then when I'm consuming it, it is the most pleasurable, enjoyable experience I've ever had. So if you love your food, and that's why you think you shouldn't fast, turn it a 180. It's why you should fast, because you'll get greater enjoyment from your food if you get into the mindful stuff as well that we do than you ever could have possibly imagined.
That's beautiful, and it's so absolutely spot on. And I always thank the farmers for my food, and I always thank who's prepared it. And that, last week I was saying thank you farmers, thank you Amchara, and I tap the glasses on the slate and just go cheers, and appreciate. And that's just on a juice, kind of. But the thing is, once you've done that fasting and you've cleaned your palate. And your palate starts with your gut and, what's going on in your gut. And your palate recognises healthy things. And it only takes apparently 15 times to try something to actually like it. Things that, my eldest daughter says that she can drink any alcohol because I took her to Amchara so young, and she said, when you got me on those shots, Mother, I could do any bloody shots after that. Okay, but that was turmeric, darling. That was lovely. And she went, yeah, tequila's pretty good, Mum. But once you start honouring those flavours and rebuilding that gut biome, clearing out all that crap and then building the new stuff, it tastes so healthy, and you taste the healing aspect.
I would probably put it even perhaps even slightly differently in that when we're stripped away from, if we could go back to a natural world again, which is where I love to go back to the ancient and the wisdom, because I think that's where the wisdom lies, that's where the real true knowledge lies, and we're just to restate it, standing on the shoulders of that really. When we are stripped away from those artificial cravings, it makes sense we would be naturally drawn to foods through our smell and taste that are good for us. Mm-hmm. I've not seen many bears going to the manual and asking the health teacher or the educator, how many bears go to the Ofsted bear on how to bring up their kids, right? This is how you need to do it. Oh, actually, I've done this, and my parents did it, and they taught me, and they just kind of learned, right, what works. And in the same way with our health, we would just do it. So it would make sense our senses would attract us to the foods that are right for us. So whilst you say it might be a challenge to enjoy those things in the early stages, we are in a different paradigm now in that we are sometimes trying to consume things that aren't always palatably enjoyable to begin with, because there's a lack of natural nutrition that's coming from things. Even if you try to live naturopathically, the soil isn't nutrient dense and the water isn't as good and all those different things. So that's why I think supplementation actually has its place in a modern world because of that. And so naturally though, I think we're drawn to, so I love coriander. I'm drawn, I could almost have it on my breakfast if I don't eat breakfast anymore, but if I was to. And it turns out through the various tests I've done that I have liver pathways that naturally need supporting, through which coriander is a really, really important part of that. And it's really interesting that I would crave it and digest it. And so I think our body draws us, and our senses, when we give it the space to, we are drawn to the natural foods that our body really deeply needs. It's telling us, everything links.
Yeah, no, I completely on board with that. And you just, a lot of people, I'm going to put this a different way. A lot of people find it very hard because they will smell fast food, and a McDonald's or a KFC or something like that, and they will think that has drawn them in. But it hasn't. Well, it has. But can you explain how this works and what this does to our neurological pathways?
One of the keys with consumption in general, I'll answer the question, but even just before I say, one of the keys of consumption is that we tend to eat from here and here, and we're not really eating from here. There's so much stimulation that occurs here, and when the food is manufactured...
And for those of you listening, Justin's pointing to his throat, though, and then the gut is obviously where we need to be eating.
Yes, we don't eat from our tummy, where the hunger actually would reside. We eat from our throat and from our mind. And when food is manufactured, lots of very clever people work to try to get food to what's called its bliss point. The bliss point is the point where you get the greatest dopamine release and the food becomes most addictive. So truthfully, you're not satiating hunger when you're going to those stimulating foods. You are satiating craving. This is a very important difference. And yet we have come to consider craving as hunger. And they are two different things. But you only learn that internally once you've gone through a process of stripping it back. I remember years ago seeing somebody stood out. There was an independent burger place that had opened near a place I lived, and it happened to make these incredible, wholesome, freshly made, fresh steak burgers, and it was right next to a McDonald's, funny enough. I remember watching a queue one day and seeing this huge queue outside McDonald's. People queuing because who deliberately ran a promotion at that time when this other one opened next door to it. And just thinking that the power of branding, and that brings me to the second part, that people eat in their heads as well. People say digestion starts the moment you put food in your mouth. That isn't true. Digestion starts when you first look at food. Your saliva response, if you think about it, you start looking at a plate of food and you start saying you want to eat, that saliva response kicks in immediately. It actually happens beforehand. And so learning that gap between stimulus and response, that's part of what I do with the coaching programs now. And I work with people. We've set up another website where it launches next week or two called Amchara360.com, where we support people after retreats. Creating that gap between stimulus and response is a really important part of you going through those higher levels and those evolved levels to change. It's hard. The other really important part, Philly, is forgiveness. It's so important when you're going on this journey to start with a sense of forgiveness of self. You're not going to shame yourself into a better outcome.
No, you're not.
And yet most of the education that we have and most journalistic and investigative stuff into things generally is built around shame. And that everything just needs to change your behavior and attitude. And as long as you change your behavior and attitude, then everything changes. And if you haven't done that, that's just down to you. Now, are we saying that people in the 70s who are much healthier just all were born with better willpower, or all had better behavior and all had better attitude? Is that a logical thing to say, that people 50 years ago just had those things? Or are we saying, actually, something's changed so massively in our environment that we have now been triggered into these things? So I think that one of the keys is that you need support mechanisms to make change. It's very hard to make them in a self-reference way. Very difficult. It's not impossible, but it's difficult. One of the reasons people come to Amchara is because they're supported. That's great.
I mean, this goes for me as well. I'm really healthy. I fast, intermittent fast every day. Many days I do an 18-hour fast. I've been doing this for a long time, but because I wanted a complete and utter 5-day fast, I just felt I needed the support. Then I want to come on to the fact you talked about...
I think as well, though, Philly, if I may say, is that knowing you well as I do, that it's funny because you when you messaged me and you said, I'll do all these films at Amchara, I meant to message you back and say, do me a favour if we don't. Can you just go and switch off for 5 days and stop and just be at Amchara and just heal yourself? But I know that for you, healing is also the doing, right? So I just made my peace with that's how you were going to be. But
You'll be pleased to know I did very, very little work while I
Good.
was at
We must have
Amchara.
picked up on it then through
Yeah,
youth.
and I was meant
Good.
to. I was meant to. What I did do was read some cracking books
Great.
of people that I'm interviewing coming up on the podcast. So some really good books.
How often do you switch off every day? Come on, I'm going to interview you for a minute. How often do you switch off every day? How often do you turn off the devices and literally just do a 20-minute total detox, a daily detox?
I do a detox when I walk my dogs.
So you've just avoided the question. So I'll ask you again. How often do you switch off completely every day just for 10 or 20 minutes?
Once a day, which is not enough.
I'd like to probe more of that answer. I wasn't persuaded by it, but
Yeah.
okay.
And I have been known to go on my dog walks and take my phones and go live.
Yes.
So
I'm not surprised.
yeah.
Okay.
I don't message on the dog walks. I don't. If I'm not going live, I leave the phone here. But very often I go, I'll just hop on a quick live. And
Well, one thing I would recommend to you and to everyone is to find that little oasis every day, 10 minutes, put it in your diary. Say, I'm committing to this time. Involve your family and people that are close to you and say, I've got this really exciting thing I'm going to do. What's that? Nothing for 10 minutes. And literally say that. So I'm going to turn my phone off and I'm going to turn the TV off. And I'm just going to sit in silence and just be me for 10 minutes. And just notice what happens. See if you can do it for 10 minutes. Who would think that would be a difficult thing to do? To spend 10 minutes silently in your own space with no distraction. Try it.
it is quite a hard thing to do in this day and age, especially for younger people. It's incredibly hard because they've grown up in this multi-sensory world that is, all consuming. I want to come back though. You mentioned and touched on then about the very clever people that design food. So this is an art form, a science, not in the good sense of the words, but so much money goes into making these foods addictive.
Of course.
Doesn't it? I mean, to a level that is completely unimaginable to somebody of my generation going back 50 years, when I was a child. You just couldn't imagine that people could actually, I consider, wicked in what they do. And it starts from the moment a baby is born. There's been this big push not to breastfeed and to use formula, but the formula doesn't have the colostrum. It doesn't, it's GMO product. Do you want to touch on that a little bit?
There's no cavalry coming to save you. And you as an individual, one way or another, need to take responsibility for your health. And it doesn't mean say you do it on your own. There's a very big difference. And creating support mechanisms around you to achieve that is an important part of that. There's no cavalry coming to save you. The people that run these companies are legally obliged to do the best they can for their shareholders and make as much money as possible. One can spend hours and days energized by that value system, or one can just mindfully observe it and peacefully navigate around it. I would recommend the best strategy for an individual is to peacefully observe it and navigate their way around it. That's not to say it's not challenging. It is challenging. And so my emphasis tends to go to what can you do? We know what we shouldn't do. Avoid these foods. Look to be as natural in your health as you possibly can. That's a nice phrase. Right, how do I do that? The gap between the knowing and the doing. The gap between the knowing and the doing. I can't say it enough. The gap between the knowing and the doing is the most important part. The doing involves lots of things. It involves support mechanisms. It involves you taking time. It involves you getting into nature. It involves you feeding your soul. And it involves forgiveness. When it goes wrong and you consume the cake or you consume the biscuit, that's okay. Honor it. Genuinely honor it.
And
I
forgive
mean that in
yourself.
its fullest sense. So I've now made a conscious decision today that I'm going to have, won't say the brand, I'm going to have that meal from that particular establishment.
That
and sit
unhappy
there
meal.
And honor it. Honor it. Go to it. You have decided, make the conscious decision to do it. Now, what will probably happen when you make the conscious decision to honor the time to have that meal and you tune into it and you smell it and you consider it and you think about how it's going to go into your body, you might find that your relationship with that meal you're about to consume starts to shift. That's when we're moving into these mindfulness principles. I'm big into these mindfulness principles where you start to treat life where you move into a position of a witness as to what's going on as opposed to a judge. You just observe what's going on peacefully, cogently, and then you start to make calm decisions around it. So I would explore ways of being mindful. There is so much wonderful resource out there that's available to us for free around all the clutter. Finding peace, strong friendships, strong family support, involved. When was the last time you said to somebody, I know you probably do, but most people, when do you sort of say to somebody, in fact, let's do it differently. If you say you're going to go and meet someone, why don't we meet up? When people say, let's meet up for what do they normally say? Let's meet up for a drink. Let's meet up for a coffee. Two things, when they say drink, what they really mean is alcohol. Let's meet up for stimulation. How often do you say to someone, let's meet up for a salad? Let's meet up for a walk.
Well, actually, I have friends that every week we go, oh, when are we going for a walk?
Great. And through that cultivation, if I may, just for a second, and through you cultivating that experience, or you now said to your friends, let's meet for a walk, what happens?
We talk, we go for a walk, we go out in nature, we have our dogs, and well,
how socially reinforcing is that?
It's lovely. I have to say that we started this with a very dear friend of mine. We started this during COVID, and my friend thought I'd gone mad over this period of time.
Oh, you are mad, Philly. I've got news for you. It's all right. But don't worry, you're my kind of mad, so it's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah.
So she had to unfollow me from social media. So she'd just say, let's go for dog walks, because that was just easier to talk about the dogs and the children. But we've continued it,
Wonderful.
and she was at my event with Barbara O'Neill, this year, and just kind of went, wow, that was amazing. So,
Brilliant.
We've really kind of come round, and walking. I love saying let's go for a walk. I also text people and go, we're going for a tree hug, because I love hugging a tree.
Wonderful. And I think that what you've illustrated there is a beautiful example. So I would encourage someone listening to this, think, what are the easiest things I can do? Who is the healthiest friend I know? Or maybe the healthiest friend I've lost touch with? And just get together and say, what could we just do together? And it could just be once a week. Set the bar low. Make it an achievable thing that you're not trying to... Most people, when they try to make change, they try to do it in a 180 way all at once, and then it collapses and they feel bad about themselves, and they get into guilt and shame, and they go reinforce the habit, generally with bad food. It makes them feel good, and that whole pattern, that bind just spirals. Part of the coaching we do is try to break that spiral. What can you do for yourself? Put things into your environment. I come back to it again. The environment is the key, generally where it starts. How can I make some changes to my environment? Whether that's what's in one of your cupboards. Maybe it's one day a week when you go for a particular meal. Maybe there's that social group you put together. Start on changing that environment in a way that's accessible to you. And that walk that you do with your friends, that's wonderful. That becomes a linchpin of something really positive to do every single week that all your friends benefit from. Just becomes normal for you, right? You don't even think about it. It's just a normal thing for you to do.
It's just normal.
Yeah.
I have to say we don't do it every week. We're both
Okay.
busy, and we most probably only manage about once every month or two.
Yeah.
But it's what we do. We know that
It's a great ritual though, right? And
it's our ritual.
Yes. Yeah, brilliant.
So I want to come on a little bit to some of the other things that I did at Amchara, because it isn't just about fasting. It isn't just about the walks, and I have to say the morning walks and the sunset walks.
So you went to Gozo. You went to the Gozo.
I went to the Gozo
Yeah.
one, and the sunsets are magical, and we're going to be putting out some social media.
Can I tell you something magical about Gozo that's I've never seen anywhere else ever?
Tell me.
Whenever you go to Europe and you see these wild feral cats, they're quite spiky. They're never in Gozo.
They're not.
They're so friendly in Gozo. They just come up and you think these are wild cats. They should be all scratchy, and they just come up and have a little purr with you, a little stroke. Isn't that incredible?
It is incredible, and
What's all that about?
I don't know. And they don't look wild. They look really kind of well kept, but they're wild.
There's something in that island that just has an energy that's a little bit special and a little bit unique.
It is. It is so much so I'm thinking about selling my house and moving to Amchara. I'm really tempted after
Yeah.
a week there, I can't tell you. But there were lots of other treatments, and I spoke about massages and, the lovely things we did. I had far infrared sauna every day. So talk us through the importance of a far infrared sauna.
And there's some beyond the fire. I'll talk about the fire infrared sauna, but also there's some great stuff coming up now. Red light therapy, which is exploding, and in fact, essentially what's happening with fire red sauna is the infrared is mimicking some of the rays that you get from sunlight that you can't even necessarily see, and the most powerful rays that impact positively the mitochondria are sunset and sunrise. And isn't it interesting again? I come back to these ancient imagery of people staring at sunsets and staring at sunrises, and how good we often feel when we see those images and connect to those. And yet those frequencies of light are the best light for us. So the far infrared is mimicking that infrared. Something else you can also do is you can get these infrared just panels. And one thing I haven't done yet, but when it gets colder in the winter and I'm drinking my structured water, you can get one of these little fire infrared panels and point it at your water. And that will give you the benefits of the sunlight would have on the water. So the red light therapy is where this is getting into.
Yeah.
And it's just a form of red light therapy. And there's another brilliant person who I'm going to interview, actually. I've forgotten his name, but I'll send you a link to him. And he's just this mad professor guy, all about red light and blocking blue light and everything else. But interestingly, again, I've said it before, I'll say it again, it goes back to ancient principles.
Yes. And, the ancients would sit just by the fire, and just by having that fire pit and, that spiritual connection, music around a fire pit, which is why it's always part of the ceremonies for any kind of plant medicine retreat, is so important. And the power of staring. And I make sure I always take my glasses off now when I walk. At some point, I've got to reverse my eyesight, but, and I'm working on it at the moment with the pearl powder. But it's so important. I didn't know until I interviewed Dr. Catherine Clinton that when you go for your early morning sun and evening sun, that I know sunglasses are a no-go, but normal glasses actually cut out 40% of those beautiful rays of light that you need. So no wonder we're all blooming blind, because they put us in glasses and then they up your prescriptions.
Of course.
And if I could go back to when I first had my glasses and turn back the clock, I would never have needed these buggers, but I do. And well, no, I don't. I think I do, but I spend a lot of time on my laptop, on social media, and this makes it a lot easier to see.
Yeah.
But I know that I can work on that. I know with the pearl powder, I know with the light, and I've got a far infrared lamp I have by my bed, and I stare at it. I've started this year just staring at it for a couple of minutes every day and letting those rays go into my eyeballs.
And that natural sunlight. And all of these answers generally, I think, lie inside us, or they're accessible naturally, one way or another. It's hard to always access them, of course, because in a busy life, in a busy world, and we have to go and earn money and do all these different things, and we're often cocooned into environments that aren't healthy. But you can find these little moments in your day where they are, and if you can do it with other people, I think that's a really important part of making those long-term changes as well. So get into nature. Get around other friends and cultivate those friendships of people. Get into groups and breath work. Now, breath work is the other thing that we haven't really talked about, but this is massive in how it can, and through fasting, your breath changes as well.
Yeah. I mean, I trained with Soma Breath. I'm a breathwork coach. I've got my manifestation meditation album out. A huge proponent of breathwork. I do it every single day. That grounding, getting your feet on the ground, actually absorbing the energy of the planet.
Yes, and I heard from Gerald Pollack recently that the earth is negatively charged. And if you
Yes.
walk barefoot on the grass, which I now do every single time, and I'd recommend it to everybody, but with one caveat. The other day, I was walking barefoot on the grass. I was walking my son to his football camp, and on the way back I stood on a bee. So I had to... So that was a little lesson. So walk slightly carefully as I'm walking on that barefoot on the grass, but it's okay, Mr. B, poor Mr. B.
Poor Mr. B.
Yes.
I feel sorry for Mr. B.
Yeah.
I walk around the woods here every day barefoot. That is my 20-minute dog walk. I take my shoes off. Even if it's snowing, ice, I can come back with my feet black from cold, and I just know I have to put a cayenne pepper wrap on it.
That reminds me, have you heard of Dr. David Kelly?
No, I haven't.
He's the guy. No, Dr. David Dilley, Professor David Dilley, Dr. David Dilley.
No, I haven't.
Phenomenal climatologist guy who I reckon you should interview. He is explaining how we've entered global cooling, how we've entered natural global cooling, and how things are going to get so much colder. And he needs an audience. I know this won't make the video.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just talking slightly differently now, but he's a guy that you've got to interview.
Okay, I will do. No, this will make the video. I'm not going to edit that.
Okay.
So, what's his name again?
Professor David Dilley.
Professor David Dilley.
Yeah, Professor David Dilley. He is a climatologist, and
podcast.
he has been explaining how we have ended the natural global warming cycle, and now we're going into a natural global cooling cycle. And even though the Met Office are telling us every month it's the hottest May ever, hottest June ever, and anyone who can just stand outside
and remember their childhood goes, well, that's bollocks.
Nonsense. I remember the last really hot summer I can remember we had was 2019. The year, but 2020 was quite a nice summer, the summer of COVID. The year before was blisteringly hot. I remember that. And the summers have been getting cooler. And it's...
Well, they're also spraying us the whole time.
Well, yeah, maybe. I don't know about that. Is that something you may know more about than me? I just know that naturally they're going to get colder, and it's going to be prepared. It's going to start. It's already getting colder, and it's going to get much, much colder. So check out Professor David Dilley.
Okay, I will definitely do that, and I would just say to everybody to stock up on cayenne pepper, because that's what you're going to need to put that fire back into your body. And get a wood-burning stove. Whatever the government tell you, ignore it and get a wood-burning stove. I should do an ad for a wood-burning stove.
Yes, yeah.
So, well, it has been absolutely fantastic to have you on the show. That's given everybody a really good introduction, if they're not there already, on fasting and what you do. And you're online as well, and there's a support mechanism. And just, thank you for...
Yeah, it's Philly, it's been such a pleasure. We've talked about this for a long time, haven't we? So it's
We
so
have.
great to get down to it. And if I could just say, if people visit the website, amchara.com, sign up for the newsletter. There's lots of stuff that's going to be coming. I'm going to do free webinars and coaching for people as well, so they can get into different strategies of healing themselves in a free way.
Brilliant. That is really good to know. We'll put all the links in the show notes. And just thank you for my trip there. It was just the highlight of my year, and I feel at such peace with myself coming back.
Should we do a little thing for your followers? A little thing if they want to go? Should we work out a little code where they can get some sort of
That would be lovely.
free treatment or something like that?
Yep, that would be lovely.
We'll come up with something. We'll put something in the link below where they can get something free to go to Amchara, referred by you.
So once again, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and my time in Gozo was just wonderful. If you go to Amchara's webpage and you go to my webpage, we've got a little, we're not giving you a discount code here because Justin doesn't believe in discount codes. He believes in value added. So you're going to get a little gift from Amchara if you book one of their retreats. And you have one in Somerset as well, don't you, in the UK?
Yeah, well, there's one in Somerset, down on the Somerset-Devon border, a beautiful little manor house down there. If you want to be in the English experience, the English countryside, and if you want to indulge yourself a bit and you want the sunshine and the magic of Gozo, then you can head out there instead.
Thank you so much. Great interview. It's been lovely to have you on the show.
My pleasure.
I'm feeling really good. I'm doing really well. And my little health hiccup is nearly over because I know that I'm my own doctor. And by now, guys, you should know the doctor of your future is you. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
Before you go, we all know the importance of journaling for mental health, and that's why I've updated my book, The Natural Wellness Journal, to help you navigate the path of self-healing. Available on phillyjlay.com, and if journaling isn't your thing, I've created an interactive ebook, The Wellness Way, Your Natural Health Systems, that will connect you to some of my greatest podcast guests so you can learn more and take back the power over your health. Thank you.